In their first season ever in the Big Ten, Oregon has ran through this conference with ease. They finished undefeated in Big Ten conference play, capping off the regular season with a 45-37 win over Penn State in the Big Ten Conference Championship. And look, when Oregon went up 28-10, I thought this game was over. I thought that they were about to avalanche the Nittany Lions. I thought this was about to be a 56-17 beatdown, but I give a lot of props to James Franklin and company for being able to get back into this game and making it a competitive matchup. Because, you know, Oregon's offense, they were hot all night. Dylan Gabriel, he looked like he couldn't miss a receiver at all. He had 4 touchdowns. His accuracy was just pinpoint tonight. Tess Johnson was going off. Their ground game was going off. But, you know, Penn State's defense, they were able to get a couple of stops, and their offense was able to capitalize off those stops and make it a close game. And this is probably the best game that I've seen Penn State play against the opponent of Oregon's caliber in a very long time under James Franklin. We already know what James Franklin and this team does when they get into big time games. They always fold. It's not really that competitive, but there was a moment when I felt like, okay, like maybe Penn State could win this one. Yeah, Drew Arler, he played a pretty good game. I never really seen Drew Arler play as well as what he did tonight against any other good teams that Penn State has played with him at the helm at QB for the last 2 seasons. Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, they were on fire. They combined for 229 rushing yards. Tyler Warren, he was doing what he has been doing all season long, just dominating no matter where they line him up at. But how about Harrison Wallace stepping up at wide receiver for Penn State? Because the biggest reason why Penn State was able to hang around somewhat with Oregon tonight was because of Harrison Wallace being able to step up. The biggest weakness that has haunted Penn State this year is their lack of elite playmakers on the perimeter. Harrison Wallace was able to be the other piece in that passing game to complement Tyler Warren. And it helped them kind of open up their playbook a little bit more, because then you couldn't just double team and just put all your focus on stopping Tyler Warren when you got Harrison Wallace stepping up and making big plays. And their offensive coordinator, Andy Nikodolnicki, after watching some of the play calls that he was dialing up in this game, I would be shocked if he doesn't end up being a head coach somewhere at the end of this season, because he's one of the best play callers in all of college football. He just does an incredible job of scheming guys open and finding ways to generate explosive plays. And he's really creative with it. The way that he just moves guys around out of position, he has a really good feel for when to call certain plays. Sometimes coaches just randomly call these weird gadget plays at the wrong time, and it always ends in disaster. But Andy Nikodolnicki, he was cooking tonight. And he was also a big part in Penn State being able to keep this game close, because I felt like Oregon was just going to run Penn State out of the building. I was not expecting this to be as close as a game as what it was. And up until Penn State's final offensive possession, when Drew Arler threw that costly interception, they were in this game. They were in it. But Oregon once again showed why they have been the only elite team in college football this year. They played a great game offensively. Their defense had probably their worst game of the season. But you're not going to dominate everybody. And for you to be able to win a game like this when it seemed like you were kind of losing a little bit of control of it, when Penn State started to rally from behind and get back into it, is a testament to why Oregon probably is going to end up winning the national championship this year. They can win any kind of game. They can win a close defensive battle. They can win a high-scoring shootout if it's 45-42, 45-37 like what it was in this game tonight. They have as much talent as what you need to win a national championship. And they also have the great coaching that's needed to be able to get the most out of all of those talented players. And coming into this year, it didn't really feel like Big Ten fans were sleeping on Oregon. It more so was being a little bit skeptical about if their style of play was going to carry over to the Big Ten. Were they going to be able to adjust to the physicality of this conference? And They answer that with flying colors. They, unlike USC on the other hand, who look like what we thought Oregon could have been, a soft West Coast team that's just finesse. They only want to beat you on the perimeter. Oregon, they were taking it to Penn State up front in this game. Remind you that Penn State has one of the best defensive lines in all of college football. Abdul Carter is probably going to be a top 5 pick in next year's draft, and Oregon was running right at him. Dan Lanning was saying, bro, we're not scared of you. You're a good player, but we can run on you. We can run on your side. We can run on any team that we want to. Oregon showed why they are, once again, the only elite team in college football this year. They just have so many different ways that they can beat you. They can beat you throwing the football 50 times. They can beat you running the football down your throat. And their defense, even if they do surrender a lot of points, they can get big stops when it matters the most. I never really thought that Oregon was going to struggle transitioning from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten. I always kind of laughed at the people who thought that with how well Oregon has recruited the last decade or so. Oregon has always been a program that has been built to compete at the highest level, no matter any conference that they play in. And with this win tonight, you're going to get a first-round bye in the playoffs, and I don't see anybody being able to stop you. If you play Ohio State again, I'll take you to win that one, because Dan Lanning right now, he's just coaching circles around everybody in the Big Ten. Now, if he has to play Georgia, that may be a different conversation, because, you know, Dan Lanning comes from that Kirby Smart coaching tree, and Nick Saban owned Kirby Smart, and Dan Lanning could end up being what Kirby was to Nick Saban, just getting owned by the master. And now there may be a few years when Dan Lanning may be able to get one over on Kirby Smart, but I got to see that game play out. I think if there's any team in the playoffs that Oregon doesn't want to see, it's Georgia. And of course, you Ducks fans are going to say, man, we can beat anybody. Listen, you don't want to see Georgia. You don't. You rather see Ohio State and anybody else before you want to see Georgia again, because yes, in theory, you should be able to take care of business against Georgia because you have a better team than Georgia. You have a better roster than Georgia. You have a better quarterback than Georgia. You got a better everything than Georgia. But one thing about Kirby Smart that he has showed this year is that you should never count out the dogs. No matter how down they may look, they're always capable of being able to rise up to the occasion. You know, I wouldn't want to see Georgia in the playoffs if I'm Dan Lanning, because Kirby Smart, he knows Dan Lanning's tendencies really well. And one thing about Georgia is if you allow them to hang around, they will beat you. They just are adapt to winning these close games. But this was a great season for Oregon. They made a statement this year in the Big Ten. They ran through this conference with ease. There wasn't really a doubt about who was going to win this thing from week 1 to the conference championship. I was pretty confident that Oregon was going to win this thing.